Hey, Siqi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. We can't wait to have this wonderful session.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, yes. Why don't you just, a few seconds, introduce yourself, and then we will go right into the question. This is a live interaction, so people on the call, feel free to just open up your mic, ask questions, or put in the, chat. This is for everyone. So, Siqi, please, just do a real quick intro of yourself.
Great. Yeah, I'm Siqi. I run a company called Runway. We make finance software that's understandable to people outside of finance too. So some of our customers include Superhuman, AngelList, Lambda AI. It's my fourth time being a CEO, third time being a founder. Before this, I ran a company called Sandbox VR. Before that, I was head of product and VP of growth at Postmates, and they bought my second company. And before that, my first company was acquired by Zynga, and I was head of product through the IPO. So pretty eclectic background. Also a pretty prolific angel investor. But yeah, that's the highlight.
Yeah, that's an amazing career. We all know that Zynga is the company that produced, some of the first few games on Facebook ever, right?
That's
So this is an amazing experience. But today we are going to talk about AI, for throughout the session. Axel and I are working on this AI native browser. I don't know you got a chance to try it. If not, definitely try it out. But if
cool.
you do, would love to hear what you have. But our mission is very simple. We wanted to bring AI to you, to the users, because I fundamentally believe AI technology is actually way ahead of the adoption. Let's actually even adopt the AI technology that's already mature, right? Don't tell me all day long about what the wonderful, interesting research about agent, which is amazing stuff. Make no mistake about we are working on it too. But even for AI technology that's already mature, already we want that for user to feel it. So that's the intention. We do this browser so that people can get a value of AI, much easier. But for today, I want to hear from you, about, more about AI because we invited founders like yourself, VCs or professors doing AI to talk about AI. So I'll start with one question, Axel, I'm pretty sure, he's my co-producer. He's actually, produced, probably has a few other questions. I just started with one, you posted just a week ago. You said, a good metric for AI adoption in the company is how many non-technical people are pushing code to production. Can you elaborate on it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like, okay, so for some context, we've been working on AI features in our product for quite a while. And what we've seen is a shift in the market. Like a year ago, you talk about your AI features, and most people in finance don't care. And what is happening today is really interesting. It's shifted from they want AI and they don't even care about like what it does because there's this top-down mandate to like no matter what we have to use the AI one, right? And I think that's broadly happening inside companies, right? Everyone wants the company and the people in it from a top-down perspective, whether it's like Toby at Shopify saying we've all got to use AI. And so then the question is like, how do you really know, your team is actually doing it in a productive way? And what I found is that, one of the great equalizers that AI gives people is the ability to get closer to the activities that actually produce value. Most tech companies, that tends to be producing code. And so I think if you're a truly like AI native operational company, you've built a lot of things to enable that is newly possible. So I'll give you an example. This started happening about yeah, this is about 6 months ago or so. We shipped dark mode and it was shipped by a salesperson. Like, it's pretty wild. I mean, it's a smart salesperson, but the fact that someone can like talk to a customer and say, I think it'll be really cool to demo and just vibe code a future, pretty sophisticated feature is fairly new. And so once we started seeing that happening, we've identified that there's enormous amounts of friction between a customer experiencing a problem, the team seeing it, and then getting it done, right? You have to like file a ticket, write a spec, right? And what we've built is we spent a lot of time enabling cursor, enabling agents such that we literally can share you a Slack thread of this, right? We have a product feedback channel, and there's grain clips. There's like it's populated by CX person, and it goes into a Slack channel, right? So there's a thread, and they're in this thread regularly. People are just tagging Cursor, and Cursor's like, "Cool, I'll take a look at it. Take a look at the spec. Here's a PR. What do you think?" And it gets pushed. And like half the time, it's done by someone non-technical. So I really think like the one of the signals for how truly AI native you're operational is probably like what percentage of your code is like written by someone effectively who isn't even an engineer.
Wow. So you mentioned at first about salesperson change the product, not change the, added a feature of the dark mode to your product. But you are also saying that it's not the only one. There are
Yeah.
multiple, many other features are shipped by non-technical people.
Yeah, more and more, and you can see it in our Slack. It's like really remarkable. And this is like brand new, right? Everyone's familiar with Cursor, but we didn't even have to build much of it. Cursor has like a Slack bot that was released, I think, about a month ago. Of course,
I have
there's
a technical question on this.
next work.
The look, Cursor can produce something, but who knows, right? Maybe the thing works well, very well for the
Sure.
first 5 minutes, but now, after that, run into certain situation. How do you know this thing? I mean, how do you,
Yeah.
no technical, I mean, it's hard for a technical person to do the quality control, let alone the non-technical people to do the quality control. How do you deal with that problem in
Yeah,
your,
I mean, obviously, it still goes through a code review step, like all code does, right?
God,
So an engineer does, in fact, review the code. But before that happens, the CX person, it generates a build automatically, so you can like try it to see if it works or not, and so generally you play around with it. But what's interesting is this is like coming from our customer success team. Like I just had a conversation last week and they're like, "Hey, we want to do more because a lot of the requests that people have, are the smaller ones, copy, position, and button, they can just be perfectly done by Cursor." But they have identified as a customer success person, "Hey, I think we could be a lot more effective in developing these features or having Cursor do the right thing if we had a better understanding of how the code works." Um, and so they're pushing a project where, hey, can we just give that context to Cursor instead inside the repo, right? The bigger context is like, what do the different UI elements in the source code, how did it correspond to different product features and workflows? And we could just like give that context to Cursor instead of having to train every CX person to do it. And that's what actually led to my tweet,
okay.
which is that if you invest in this, you can enable more and more of your company to contribute code with more and more sophistication.
Cool. Excel may probably, if you have a questions, please go ahead. I have one thing. Do you have any tips to share with, whether people on the call or your fellow CEOs or founders about a tip or hack that you use AI and then you found, wow, this has improved my productivity a lot.
I've got a lot. Well, I'm going to plug the GPT I built, so very few people know this, but if you go on to ChatGPT right now and you go to GPTs and click on education, the number one GPT is actually written by me. It's called Universal Primer. And it's basically a speed learning GPT. So I've like have this a very long, like page long prompt where anything that you want to learn that's complicated, whether it's AI or quantum mechanics, it'll try to explain it in very easy to understand analogies, and recursively also try to teach you all of the prerequisite concepts. So that's a fun one that you can just use today. We built a bot called Jam Session internally. It's a Notion bot. It shows up as a user, and that one's pretty fun. So you tag Jam Session on any document, and you say Jam Session with Elon Musk, or with Steve Jobs, or Daffy Duck, and Steve Jobs or Elon Musk will leave comments in your document as that person, and you can have a conversation with them. That one's pretty fun. What else? Oh, probably like so. Just two other things that are like pretty practical. One of the really rated ways to use ChatGPT is to get ChatGPT to prompt you instead of you prompting ChatGPT. So what I mean by that is, let's say I want to create a presentation, and a presentation is about I want to like create a presentation about like finance as a game engine or something like that. And I'll just say, hey, I want to give a presentation about this. I have some ideas. I'm not quite sure it's like, fully formed, but can you just ask me questions and keep on asking me questions until you feel like you have enough to write this presentation for me? and it'll just do it. So it's asking questions, I'm having a conversation, I'm offloading it, and at some point it's like, I got it, I gotcha, and it'll write it. Oh, that one's pretty cool. And the latest one I built is probably just nerdy and really handy. But if you use Slack, sometimes you might use a save for later bookmark, right? Like there's a message you want to respond to. Um, and I also have a to-do list, so I don't want there to be two places in which have to check my to-dos. So I built this automation where when I save a message, it automatically puts it into ChatGPT and converts this message based on a context into a to-do list item, and then it feeds into my linear project automatically. So I press like save messages, and I just get a bunch of to-dos that are like properly named and formatted. So those are some of the small ones.
Thanks.
That's super interesting, and I think it'll be cool to see how your education bot stacks up against the new study mode OpenAI released. That'll be a nice
Yeah,
comparison. I'll try.
yeah.
Have you tried that out? Do you know if it's
Well, I mean, I think it does a different thing, right? I think like the from what I understand, what I read about it, is that it's gonna try to ask you questions and not just give you the answers so that you can learn. This isn't that. This is like we're just trying to get you to learn it the fastest way you can, and I'm gonna give you the answer that's the fastest. So it's like pretty different thing.
totally? And then we have a person who's asked. Of course, you've led multiple companies, so what was your favorite and why?
I mean, it's hard to not answer that question and say like my current one. Um, I mean, out of all the
AI
ones,
native.
out of all those I'm doing, I feel like this one is probably like the most commercially probably going to be the best. But in terms of sheer fun, it's hard to be sandbox. Like we're building the holodeck, get to build games. I get to be in VR all day. It feels like living in a science fiction future. Um, that one probably is like the most purely fun company, but I really enjoy and love running Runway.
And then for the future of course, applying AI in the finance sector, what do you think is going to sort of change maybe in next year, next years to come?
Yeah. So right now, if you look at the capabilities of these models and how it's being used in finance today, it's being used for generally low leverage work. So accounts receivable, accounts payable, things where you have to like send an email and just bug people on, and that's been pretty productive. It generally hasn't been quite as effective for the financial planning and modeling.
That because the financial department, they need a lot more precision than what, GPT is able to offer, or more than that.
That is not wrong. I mean, that's true, right? Like if you think about how LLMs work, they're very similar to our brains in some sense, right? Like the things they're good at is language, and we're good at that. And what it's not good at is like doing calculations, and we're not good at that either. It's why we have spreadsheets. And so it kind of makes sense, right? Like code has some elements of reasoning, but it's not really math. It's still like text. But numbers aren't quite like that, and a model isn't quite like that. You have to like actually do the calculations. So that's part of it. But I think the deeper reason is much more subtle. I think there's a misunderstanding that most people have about what finance is actually about, right? So when you think about the spreadsheet model, and you think about the purpose of it, most people would say the reason why you want to have this is you want to know where you're going and be right about it. You want to have an accurate forecast, right? But that's part of finance, but a much more important part of finance is understanding. Is understanding how the business works and what drives growth in the business and what drives cost savings in the business. And that's much more about playing around with your model, studying your model, creating like clarity in your model. It requires thinking. Um, and that's a very different use case than, oh, I have a particular thing I want to get done and I just want it to be done and correct. I want the answer. This is much more about not just the answer, but is my intuition getting better? And so that's another reason why AI is not quite as immediately economically productive, but like as the platform gets built out and the way we integrate AI gets deeper, it does create more clarity and it does help you think faster. For example, like one of the big issues with a very complicated model is that most people outside of finance or the person who didn't build it doesn't even understand how it works. you can use AI instead of like just building a model for you. You can have it explain how the model works, and that's much closer to like a lot of the job of finance. Not just having to write numbers, but understanding how it works.
I was going to say you share the tip about, let the GPT ask you questions. The similar line, right? I have a financial model, I have all the tables, I have the Excel. Hey, what questions, what are the insights I should look for? Get the GPT to get me there, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then we have another question in the chat. So of course you've covered sort of the beneficial things one can do. And do you see any mistakes people are making right now with how they're utilizing and leveraging AI?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, the first one is just more noise, right? I talked about how like people buy differently, and there's just so much noise in terms of like what AI can or can't do, and there's a lot of overpromising. And so the number one problem mistake is not having a intuitive firsthand understanding of what the frontier of the model capabilities actually are and what it is good and not good at. Right? If you don't understand like that these things aren't good at math and you try to have it like basically do math problems, you're gonna have a bad time. Right? So that's by far the number one thing is trying to get these models to do things that they're not good at yet. They will be good at everything. That's probably the biggest thing.
And then if you shift from that to more of a founder-based perspective, what sort of mistakes are founders making perhaps as they try and integrate AI into a product that maybe doesn't have it already?
So I wouldn't describe it as a mistake. I think it works. I mean, AI is such a powerful technology that you can just do the normal thing and you can get some value out of it. And what is a normal thing? The normal thing is you put the ChatGPT chat interface on the sidebar and you integrate with your data and you have a conversation with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's a really shallow integration of what AI is, what AI can do in a product. So the analogy that I'm inspired by with AI is Joel Spolsky used to write a blog called Joel and Software. And about 20 years ago, he described the difference between engineering at Google and engineering at Microsoft. And this quote lives in my head rent free. The quote is, Google engineers use the Bayesian filter the way Microsoft engineers use the if statement, right? They just like program at a different level of abstraction. They program in terms of probabilities. And when I think about like a really good AI native product, I think like it uses an LLM call the way you use an if statement. And let me give you a very specific example of like what is like the first really interesting, truly AI native feature that I've ever seen. And it is a feature inside ChatGPT that very few people talk about. Obviously for chat interface. But when ChatGPT first came out, one of the most interesting things to me was the fact that you had the sidebar of chats and the chats named themselves. That has never been possible before in the history of software, right? Like when you have a chat, when you create a chat, you're supposed to name it, or there's some structured data where you're talking to a person. But no, it was able to give the right name in the right length based on the content of the chat. That is remarkable, and that's an example of like, it's not a chat interface. You didn't have to ask it to do something, but it's just embedded in the logic of the UI, right? And I think like when I think about good implementations of AI, it is that deep, right? Every pixel and every piece of text is AI generated and you wouldn't even know it. And that's more how I think about how you should deeply integrate AI to your product. The two biggest opportunities that any I think founder or new product has against ChatGPT is one, context. ChatGPT doesn't have all the context that an enterprise would have, and there's a bunch of companies solving that. The more context you have, the more useful work it can do. But the other one is that with a chat interface, it doesn't do anything unless you tell it to do it. And so if you can figure out how to make it proactive, and there are real examples. This one of the best examples is Cursor, because if you think about that interface, you're not just chatting with it. Like you're writing the code and it's auto-completing. It's inferring intent without you having to ask. And I think if you can think about more workflows that are of that character, you're going to have a more AI native product than just another chat interface on top of your thing.
Amazing. So essentially don't ask a user to think about AI. The AI is a part of the product. This is a part of our, design philosophy of Neo as well. The browser should, let you have the value of the AI consume the value of AI without thinking about it.
Right.
So try it out. Let me know. Let us know
Yeah.
how it looks. You are such an amazing product manager. I think your inputs will mean a lot to us. We'll keep
Yeah.
improving
I,
on
I,
it.
now- I have like now 4 browsers on my computer though. So yeah, it's hard to stick with one.
But before long, you are going to use only one browser on the planet.
All
So.
right. All right.
One question I have for you, because last time you and I met, right, was at a HubSpot conference, and then you actually gave a panel speech. I was really impressed that the theme of the panel's, discussion is about AI native or AI first company, how it looks different from the rest of the in the world. Can you give us the audience some perspective? Because this is not the first company you have been with. You have such a long career in Silicon Valley. But this company, right, must be very AI first, AI native. How's the company's organization, right, different from the past?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of so when we got started, we're 5 years old now, and we started literally about a month between month before, yeah, a month before GPT-3 came out in 2020. Um, and so this has been on top of mind for our entire existence. And internally, I often talk about we never want to be more than 100 people because we started at this like exact time in history where you can scale with increasing AI leverage instead of increasing people
By the way,
leverage.
how many people you have now?
50.
So
Uh,
when you go public, you think it's going to be less than 100 people?
I think there's a really good chance, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll do the right thing for the business, obviously, but uh I mean with the trend of the AI capabilities, I think there's a real good chance you can keep it under 100. We'll do our best. But that remains the goal, and I think the goal is very much within reach.
But it's more than just the number of people, but also how you organize the organizations, right?
Yes. Well, and that's has to evolve over time as AI capabilities have gotten better, right? So where we are today, since '01 came out last September and '03, earlier this year, is very different from where it was 2 years ago. But generally, the trends have been pretty clear. Um, I would say there's like three large trends. I think the
By
first
the
one,
way, I'll pause you. This is actually so meaningful, right? The organization, you have is actually evolved based on the GPT's intelligence, right? So
that's right.
tell us more about it.
Yeah, so the first trend is that the seniority of the people that we hire, especially in engineering, is just keeps on going up. And the reason is because the work that a junior engineer can do is increasingly doable by cursor. And so the work that senior engineers do can still only be done by senior engineers. And so we basically only hire principal and staff level engineers now. So that's one interesting thing. The other thing is the walls between functions have gotten down, right? So we have a salesperson who's also doing customer success, who is also slinging code, right? We have a customer success person who is like also running finance. And it's because you now have these tools where the tools not only can do work of different functions than normally you wouldn't have, but the leverage of that work is also increasing. So you're hiring more cross-functional people. And what the combination of those two also implies is that you're hiring people who are very high agency, like people who aren't just going to be doing what they're told, aren't just like even just using ChatGPT. We're hiring people who can build these tools, right? Our interview question is like, how to use AI, and tell me about the last AI tool that you built. And want them to hear, yeah, man, like on this weekend, like I vibe coded this crazy thing that kept track of all of the golf courses I went to or whatever. Um, and so all
This is your interview question to engineers or to non-technical people?
non-technical people,
Non-technical people.
non-technical people. Yeah, I want to hear about like, oh, like they vibe coded something, they put together automation. That shows both agency but also future proofing, right? Like when you hire a person, you cannot just hire a person who is going to do a job. You have to hire people who can build leverage because AI allows them to build tools that build leverage.
Okay, so this is a huge implication. So then what is your advice to whether you're individual contributor or managers, or maybe, like you, the CEO, the executives, in terms of, such a big, big technology shift going on. What's your advice to each one of them, individually? And my next question is, what about to people still in the school? But let's go one at a time.
Oh man, I don't know about this one. uh, that one's tough because I have two kids and I don't know what to tell them. Um, actually, I can tell
The
you what.
easy one, the two executives. That's the easy one.
Yeah. But what was the first one again?
The career, meaning that people already in the career, right? People already have a job, but people have already built a 20-year good track record of doing whether marketing, engineer, sales, whatever. Now the big revolution come, right? Whether they work for your company, which is an AI native, but maybe more traditional company today, but they will face challenges. So
I
what's your advice to them?
I think it's the same thing. I think this is a greatest gift to high agency people with opinions and judgment and taste ever, right? If you think about like if you are that person and you have something that you want to build in the world, something you want to change in the world, the barrier was just for most people impossible, right? You have to learn to code, and people that's really hard. Or you find a co-founder, that's really hard, and you get laughed off the internet, right? Because the joke is like, I just need to tell a co-founder, yeah, just learn to code. But now you don't have that barrier. You can increasingly just build it yourself. And so if you're already that person, it's the greatest gift ever. If you're not already that person, then it's probably useful to become that person. It was always useful to become that person with extremely high agency and judgment and taste. But is it more important than ever to become that person? And you have to have opinions. You have to like not just be a cognitive machine. That's more important than ever. And that's the same thing that I tell my kids. That's the same thing that Naval Ravikant tells his kids. Agency is what is going to be scarce and valuable in this world, and it's not just scarce and valuable, but it's also like unfairly leveraged. Like the value of that just multiplied by like 1,000x from where it is today.
Wow, so for people with agencies, with a taste, with curiosity, this is the best time to live. I'm pretty sure this is similar to people who are the younger age, like Axel. He's still in the school. But is anything a little bit more to people like students out there?
Yeah, this is where we get super philosophical, but like the sort of like meta of the question is like what becomes valuable in an AGI ASI world, right? And like in theory, every single economically productive of utility task can be done better by an AI with better judgment and faster and cheaper. Like so where does value even accrue? And my opinion on this is at a high level, the things that will remain valuable are one, things that have proof of human embedded. And the second thing is the things that you can't make more of. So the second thing is relatively straightforward land. Like, we can't make more of that. So, like, land is for sure going to appreciate, right? And the first one is, I think, is more subtle. Um, and the idea here is that like money is not just like sort of this abstract thing. Money is a pointer to status and our ability to like control resources and influence other people. And so you think about it in those terms, that doesn't go away with AI. We are still humans. There's still competition. And so then like what is the ladder in which we're going to compete? And the ladder is, I think, going to be proof of human. And what I mean by that is like if you think about the value of a Birkin bag, for example, right, versus a plastic bag, functionally they do the same thing, but over the last 100 years, the value of a normal bag has gone down basically zero, right? Like a plastic bag, it used to be expensive, now zero. But Birkin bags are worth $50,000. Why? Because a human in France spent a shitload of time making this bag, and by wearing it, that gives you a certain amount of status. That's going to be true across a wide variety of things, right? So even if your robot at home can cook you a better tasting meal than a French Laundry in the future, you will still pay a shitload of money to go to French Laundry because it's Thomas Keller's restaurant. Anyone can watch a Mr. Beast YouTube video for free, or better yet, a Blackpink music video for free on the internet, but you will pay a shitload of money to go to that concert because there is only one Blackpink and they're there there, right? So the things that are becoming valuable is human relationships, things created by humans. I think Mr. Beast is probably going to be one of the richest people on the planet, and so that's sort of my framework. So I literally tell my kids, yeah, you should probably get really good at YouTube or something.
Cool. We should have just one or two last questions. Axel, what's the question in the chat room?
Yeah, so we've got a question here from someone. Currently, there's a heavy reliance on LLMs for the integration of generative AI and workflows. So do you think this technology will reach its limits in the future, and will we be forced to switch technologies?
I mean, if this question is about like sort of the transformer architecture, and LLMs, uh, I mean, I'm kind of like with John Carmack on this. I think maybe we're one or two sort of like discoveries away from just having it do anything. And I think there's a non-zero chance we're zero discoveries away. I mean, like it surprised a lot of like Transformer LM doubters when three different independent its teams got gold on the IOM, right? Like at IMO. Uh that people didn't think it was possible without new architecture, and clearly like it could scale further than we think. I think there's like a non-zero chance that if you just have like very good and large and evolving context windows, that just gets you to continuous learning, which is the breakthrough that people think like isn't quite there yet and we don't know how to solve. I actually think context windows are just might get you there. So I think there's a non-zero chance that we don't need to change. And if there is some kind of discovery, it's going to be like not that distinguishable from what an LLM currently does anyway.
And before we lose you, we have just one last question here. So if vibe coding is obviously going to become the dominant way students learn to build software, how do we teach them to recognize when the AI output is wrong, or when a problem is unsolvable, or when they need to think at a more fundamental level? And so what does computational literacy mean when the computation is abstracted away?
I mean, I think yeah, the variation of this question is that like, oh, when when we as humans no longer know how to like write code and do things, who's going to give the LM the data, right? Like how does anyone know what is right? And I think my answer to that question is similar to this one, which is that you would know because it doesn't do the thing that you want it to do, right? So like if you ask AI to write software, and it doesn't work and the game doesn't function the way you want it to, you would know that. And how do we as humans discover if our theories are wrong? We discover it by like trying it, running experiment, and it didn't do the thing that we expected to do in the real world, and we learn from that. And I think the thing that questions of this class sort of underrate is we do and have and can give LMs tools, and these tools interact with the real world and give LMs feedback, right? So, for example, like if you're writing code, how do you know it's wrong? Well, you can compile it, and if it doesn't compile, now you know. That's like just automatic non-human feedback. And so the short answer is like you interact with the world, see if it does the thing that it did, and if it didn't, then you know.
So I have one last question. Could we talk about tools, all that sort of thing? So I'm curious. It's a short one. Do you use GPT, ChatGPT, Perplexity, the cloud? Like, what do you use and why? And then what's the, yeah, I would love to hear.
Um, I actually dual wield. So for research things, I will use Gemini 2.5 and ChatGPT Deep Research, for different reasons. Like Google is Google and there's better searching. So that's pretty good. 2.5 Pro is super underrated. All the hype is around like cloud and O3, but 2.5 Pro is phenomenal. It's very, very good. So that's what I personally use most of the time.
What about Perplexity? Do they have a moat? That's a big controversy in the
And
Silicon Valley.
I love Aravind, and I was a very early Perplexity user, and it's still on my dock. And that was my default for everything. And I remember having a conversation with Aravind about this because his office was literally 10 steps down the door from our office for a time. Um, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be the biggest thing ever." He's like, "I don't know. Like, I don't know, like, what happens if ChatGPT just really goes down." I'm like, "I think it'll be fine." And I think for me, yeah, I think he was right. Like, I use ChatGPT by default now, so it's hard. I think that's a hard thing. Like if you look at what drives OpenAI's value, right? Like, I think long term foundation models are empirically commoditized, right? And the value is really around ChatGPT. And if that's a default for everything that you do, it's hard to see how something basically with 90% overlap is that sustainable.
Meaning that ChatGPT or OpenAI will have far more resource, far more capability in the longer run than perplexity of the world.
No, yes, but why? And my thesis is actually like there's just too much gravity towards ChatGPT. It's more about habits, right? It's more of like a Facebook argument. And this is true generally for
It's sort of
all.
a winner takes all kind of the argument.
That's kind of the thing, right? Like, why do you like even something like Cursor or anything, if the default or Lovable, if the default place where you can interact with AI does all of those things, why would you use a different thing? And so that's the bull case for OpenAI. I actually don't think it's the foundation models, it's the center of gravity around ChatGPT.
Sorry, one last question. It's for you. The company, right? You are disrupting an $80 billion business industry. Can you just, I want to just give you a chance to tell us, educate us, why you think your startup has a chance to disrupt this $80 billion business industry? What does that mean? Why?
Yeah.
Then that's my last question. Thank you.
Yeah, so what a finance model represents in abstract is a simulation of the business. So you can imagine it's like a kind of a game engine that simulates a business. And it's useful so you can understand what happens in the future, right? So this is a problem that every single company has. So the addressable market is literally every company. And this is why today is like 80-ish billion-dollar market. But on the other side of this, if you can build a really good platform that makes this understandable that people actually use, it's not just a spreadsheet. It's basically an operating system for a company. It connects every single person, everything they do in a company, from sales to product to GTM. And the question is like, what does a Windows operating system for businesses? What is the value of that? And I would argue that our value is pretty high.
Thank you so much, Siqi. This is a wonderful conversation. I'll, quote you a few of that on Twitter and then LinkedIn.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon again. Thank you for coming to our show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, have a
Thank
nice
you,
day.
everyone.
Bye-bye.